can sex offenders change? Is this question. So I'll read this question out. I'm not sure if you've already answered this question, but do you believe that rehabilitation is possible for most sex offenders, or can it only be effective in particular cases? Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I spent several years working with sex offenders. For the short answer, and the answer is no. I don't think that sex offenders will ever stop habitually offending on their own, regardless of how many treatment programs they go to. Unless something happens where they're injured, they're medically sick, they don't have access or means to get to victims and things of that nature. So physically sick, meaning that they can't get an erection, or they can't be inappropriate in a way that they would like, or they don't have access or means to get to victims, or they're ill, so they could be diabetic, could have heart issues, or, they could have gotten injured in trying to commit an offense. So if they were shot or something in that nature, which has happened. So that's the short answer. The long answer is I think that they can change in some ways. So for an example, like, when I used to work with sex offenders, the way that most offenders, when they would meet me, in terms of talking, when we met, in terms of talking about their history of offenses and things like that, their whole thing is deny, deny, deny. And they're stuck in this delusion, like it didn't happen. It's a made up case. They got the wrong guy, something, or the wrong woman, something like that. This person came on to me, they were doing X, Y, and Z, and so they're pretty much placing blame anywhere else but themselves after they're denying it, right? They're placing blame on the victim, they're placing blame on some crazy ex wanted to get me caught up, and that kind of stuff. So usually it starts out like that, and so after our work together, we normally get to a place where, one, they're honest. So they are honest. Yes, I did do it. And yes, I have a problem. And, that problem came from X, Y, Z. I was molested as a child. I was doing dope. I was doing whatever I wanted to do. I didn't care about nothing. I was a reckless crash out. It's they'll kind of say something like that, they'll give that, or I was molested as a child, and something like that, or I'm just an evil person. So there is a level of like, taking responsibility and saying, taking ownership and saying, like, these are all the things that led to me having poor impulse control. That's one aspect of offending, is poor impulse control. And then they get to a point where they're honest about what's going on right now, like, because a lot of people get triggered by television. I would say television and magazines are the number one thing where they see young children, which is why I say, television, magazines, and social media, which is why I say don't post your children, because I've worked with people who are getting off to children, and so they'll be honest about, like, listen, I watched the Cosby Show. I saw little kids on there. I watched this show. I saw little kids on that, and that just sent me down a hole where I was masturbating for over an hour, something crazy like that, right? It's not crazy, but it's just, for the normal person, it's going to sound crazy. But they could take ownership of that, and then they could start to feel like, I know I shouldn't have been doing that. And so that comes along with that. Like, I take responsibility for that. I shouldn't have been doing it. Here are the things that I try to stop me. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. And here's just why I was feeling so triggered to even do that in the first place. So they can get to that space. There's also a level of honesty about, like, maybe at the end of our work together, or maybe, for whatever reason we're ending, or maybe we're just checking in sometimes. And because a lot of people, when they get to prison, they feel, I don't need to be here, this is bullshit, that kind of stuff, right? They're just sort of mouthing off, like feeling entitled, like you guys are doing me wrong by being here. But then at that point, there comes a point in time when they're like, you know what, Dr. Jones, I'm if I'm being real about it, I don't need to leave prison, because I'm not ready to leave prison. Because if I were to leave right now today, I would mess up so bad. If I'm keeping it real with you, I would go back down this hole, and I wouldn't be able to get out. I know that I'm not cured. I know that, like, I've still got a lot more work to do. I know that children are not safe around me. So some people get to that point, and that's really good when people get to that point where they're able to say, you know what, I'm right where I need to be. I need to be kept away from that, because I do think that that does show change, and that does show growth, where people are able to honestly say, I'm a danger to society. I'm a danger to children. I'm a reckless human being, and I'm honest enough to say that now. I'm not in denial about who I am anymore. I've got some serious challenges. And so I think there's growth and there's change in that respect. But when you talk about change in a way that a person could have complete freedom and go back and be, sitting outside of a playground, or, go work in a daycare, or, things, no, nope, nope, nope. I don't think that people can be fully rehabilitated. And I know that there's some, if you kind of do research on this, there's some schools of thoughts about that, like, where, there are some people that feel like they can change, and there's some people that feel like they don't. So there's mixed opinion, but my belief is no. And just working with people as long as I have, the answer is no. There will never be a chance where, if given the opportunity, if given complete reign, where no one is watching and no one is supervising, no one is holding that individual accountable, and he's placed with someone who is vulnerable, would he or she not take advantage? The answer is no. And that's unfortunate, because you like to think that people would be capable of change, but it's not something. And that's why when people get convicted, they have to register for life, right? And even the registration piece is where a lot of people fall through the cracks, because I feel like just registering is a whole bunch of freedom, right? The system trusts you. If you go out, you're out in the free world. You just have to register and tell us where you're at and where you're living at. And that's so many people, just even based off of that alone, fall through the cracks. They fail to register. And so a lot of times when people come to prison, it's because they fail to register. And that means that they've been unsupervised. And usually by the time they come in, they've been unsupervised for a number of years. So what have they been doing that time that they haven't been tracked, that time when they haven't reported their address and no one's gone to go check up on them, and because it's people, when left to their own devices, aren't necessarily going to be honest and forthcoming. And there's so much help out there for people with offenses that can go and get treatment. They can go to groups. They can go to therapy. There's special providers that they can go to. But even with all of that, I think when a person is left to their own deviant devices, they're going to go back to default if allowed to do so. Hope that helps. And thank you for asking that.